All right, everybody, this is going to be a long one. Nick Wright and I talk about everything from Elon Musk to travel plans, NBA, NFL, our relationship. It's a long one, but I want to start with a rant, a football rant, presented by Netflix's Quarterback. When you look at the quarterback position in the NFL, we don't have unrealistic expectations for rookie quarterbacks. I think all fans are reasonable that it's hard and you're going to be overwhelmed. Even Joe Burrow, overwhelmed early. And there's not a ton of pressure on the people that are at the top of the food chain. Josh Allen, he's rich. We know what he is. Lamar Jackson just got paid. Jalen Hurts did. I don't think they're in pressurized situations. And I also don't believe Dak and Kirk Cousins, again, most people see them as good B-plus quarterbacks. I don't think they face like more than just week to week, Sunday to Sunday pressure. And as I looked over, perused the standings in the NFL, I thought there was really only two quarterbacks that I felt like there was a lot of pressure on them. And pressure I would define as they are viewed by a certain group, perhaps small, as much more talented than their current production is exhibiting. And let me give you an example. Justin Fields. I think he faces real pressure because I think people in Chicago and a lot of people in the media think based on highlights, not overall beginning to end game production, that he's a massive talent. And I just think he's talented. But at this point, I think he's a 60-40 hit and a 40-60 failure. Slightly more than 50-50, I think it works. And I think it mostly works because I think he now has two productive receivers, perhaps three with Claypool, cross your fingers, two productive tight ends, a middle of the pack, but better than people think O-line, and Luke Getz, he's an excellent OC, young, smart guy from Green Bay. But I think of all the quarterbacks in the league, people would say, what about Aaron Rodgers? And my takeaway was, they're going to win somewhere between 9 and 12 games. Playoffs or not, he's a Hall of Famer. They'll be better. Everybody gets it. Will they be great? Probably not. But somewhere between 9 and 11, 12 games is where Aaron's going to land. He knows it. The Jets know it. And we all know it. That's not pressure. Justin Fields is different because he shows flashes of brilliance. This is the year that bears ownership and front office and probably coaches make a decision on by Thanksgiving, he's the guy or not. So I feel like Justin Fields faces the most pressure in the NFL as a quarterback. You could name anybody. Jared Goff, he's been to a Super Bowl. He's been paid. We know what he is, a B-plus quarterback. Trevor Lawrence, he's excellent. There's no pressure in Jacksonville. He got to the playoffs last year. But Justin Fields, there is a group of people that think he's a tremendous talent. And whereas Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson went from just talented, pivoting to also very good pocket quarterbacks, Justin Fields has not exhibited that yet. And this is the year. And I would say by Thanksgiving, people upstairs will make a decision. The only other quarterback I feel like there's real pressure on is in the same division, Jordan Love. Listen, you replace Aaron Rodgers, there's pressure. This is also a winning organization, pressure. This is also probably the second best after Detroit roster in the division, pressure. Jordan Love's been given a contract that's very team-friendly. So again, because he's been in the building for so many years, I think they'll know by Thanksgiving in the building. I had an agent that once said this, Nick Kahn, your bosses will make a decision on your career 9 months before they tell you. I think by Thanksgiving, Justin Fields and Jordan Love, both teams upstairs, will have made a decision. That's real pressure. Because in both cases, especially Fields, they're viewed by a small number of fans as being really special talents, and I'm not sure either is. But both will feel that pressure this season. As Netflix first partnership with the NFL, Quarterback is a new docu-series that takes a unique look at each season told through the lens of NFL quarterbacks. For the first time ever, the NFL allowed quarterbacks to be mic'd for every single game of the season. 3 quarterbacks, Cousins, Mahomes, and Mariota, give behind-the-scenes access on and off the field. I can't wait to watch this series. Check out the trailer for a first glimpse at what we're going to see.
I dedicate my life to football.
I love to compete.
At this point, all that really matters is winning.
Why short to cousin Wright?
Clamp, 2-jet rip.
Quarterback is more about the mental side. They're going to come after you.
We're going to come back 6 days from now and do it again and again and again.
All right, I bring in my buddy, co-host First Things First, also host of What's Right with Nick Wright, and we do this about every 6 weeks. We do about 40, 45 minutes, and this is kind of the slowest time of the year. It was always in our industry that after football, there was about a month, and then you'd kind of move into March Madness, NFL draft, NBA stuff. But it used to be that I look forward to August, but Sean McVay screwed that up by not playing any starters in the NFL and going 8-0. So the preseason now is reduced to talking about CJ Stroud and Bryce Young.
Yeah.
I mean, it is amazing that August used to be a time that I really looked forward. You know, it was post NBA trade deadline, and it was like, you go take a 10-day vacation, and then you're like, all right, some of this stuff last year, Kenny Pickett was my primary topic.
It's not great. I mean, I'm not saying you weren't great, but it's just August, because of NBA movement and because every summer there's a KD trade demand or a Dame trade demand and these things that seem to drag on. I think August has replaced July as the deadest time on our calendar. Yeah. And I was saying this to my wife yesterday. If you go September 1, we're recording this the end of the first week of July. That's 10 months, 10 plus months. I've been on vacation for 1 week. And now over these next 6 weeks, I'll be on vacation for 2.5 of them. So, 75% of the time off for you, for me, for all of us comes in this very condensed window, kind of post-NBA free agency, pre the start of the NFL season. But one thing that I have found on our show is because we were so heavy NBA during the playoffs and free agency that day before yesterday, we kind of just stumbled into a Bills topic. Today, we just totally ripped off your Belichick could be greater than, or Reed could be greater than Belichick topic. Just totally stole it from you, almost verbatim. That I am very excited to be talking football again, because you've been talking a lot of football throughout. We haven't been talking so much. And now I'm kind of over the Dame thing. I know he's going to go to Miami. It's all posturing. There's a really interesting part of the Dame story, which is the assistant GM in Portland does a great job, I'm sure, but his name is Mike Schmitz. He worked at ESPN from 2017 until 9 months ago. And now, seemingly, all of the reporting coming out of that network is along the lines of, Portland has the leverage. Portland's got, Miami's got to up the offer. And I do wonder how much of this is, that Mike Schmitz was there and now they're trying to get the best deal possible, but he's going to end up in Miami. I'm kind of over that story, and that there's really not much left in the NBA offseason.
Yeah, I stumbled. It was the last thing I talked about today for only 3 minutes, is that there's two sorts of what we would call classic diva wide receivers. There's the guy that is constantly difficult but productive, Des Bryant. I mean, they had to hire a security team, really babysitted him as a rookie. And then first year with Dak, he was still highly productive but got needy, and they just decided, much to the chagrin of Jason Garrett, he told me that. He said, I was fighting for him. He gives me 8-10 touchdowns a year. How do I replace that? And then there's the Stephon Diggs, Randy Moss model, where they're not trouble. They're highly productive. And then some point at like year 3, year 4, they flex.
Something happens.
Right. And I said, okay, that's different. Right? There's a lot of companies. At the volume, if I knew somebody for 3 years, I'm getting somebody that's highly productive, then maybe they flame out, or that's somebody that's very hireable, right? Not somebody that's high maintenance day one. So I said this. The Bills are telling you they're going to get out of the Stephon Diggs market very quickly. They go and get a tight end in round 1. 2 NFL GMs told me easily the best tight end. So now they have Kincaid and Dawson Knox. They upgrade running back. They immediately sign more. They double down on their defensive front.
Yep.
And what it tells me is they're trying to become more run-oriented, better up front, ground control, and get out of the Stephon Diggs. And I'll argue this. Just like New England did with Moss after 2-3 very productive years, you could get out today and he's got value. If he blows up again, half this league, 3/4 of this league, Nick, GMs are like, no.
They're going to be afraid of it.
You.
The only, listen, here's the Diggs thing is such a problem for Buffalo for a number of reasons. The typical easy fixes for the wide receiver clearly will not fix this because they're not the problem. And by that, I mean, sometimes it's, I want more money. He got the contract a year ago. Like you know what I mean? The money has been paid. It is not a money thing. The other one, if it's not money, is usually, I want more targets. Over the last couple of years, he's one of the 2 or 3, maybe number 1, but most targeted guys in the whole league. So it's like, it's not money. It's not targets. How do we fix this? And I have been kind of, I don't know what the right word is. I have found it unbelievable that Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills set this fire publicly and then are looking around angry at everyone for watching the Flames. The timeline of this is day 1 of Bills minicamp. Evidently, Stephon Diggs is there, then leaves before practice. Sean McDermott goes to the media, is asked about Diggs not being there, and says, I'm very concerned. Takes a long pause and goes, very concerned. Well, maybe you shouldn't have said that, buddy. Then the next day he's there, and McDermott goes to the media. He's like, I don't know what everyone's making such a big deal about this. I excused him. It's like, what? You fucking told us you were concerned. And then they canceled practice the next day. And then Josh Allen was on a podcast a couple days ago. I forget who it was, but a player runs it. And they asked him, it was, one of the, it wasn't one of yours, but it was similar to Richard Sherman's podcast, something like that. I forget who it was on. I apologize. And he was like, the media won't stop talking about this. And it's like, man, we wouldn't have even known about it. But your coach screwed up there. And then when you add to it that the last image we have of Diggs is him yelling at Josh Allen on the sideline, that seems to be a problem. The only question I would have there is, Colin, why haven't they just signed DeAndre Hopkins to kind of regain control of the situation? Because I do think Gabe Davis might not be a number 2. He's certainly not a number 1. I do think they need a receiver there if they're worried about Diggs. Maybe they just think, he's under contract, we're going to be fine. But that to me is if you had to right now, and this is something I mentioned to you on TV, you can only choose one of these 2 doors. The Bills make the Super Bowl or the Bills miss the playoffs. I am definitely choosing to miss the playoffs. I'm not picking them to miss the playoffs, but I think they're more likely to miss the playoffs than have an awesome year and make the Super Bowl. I think that's for damn sure.
Yeah, and I've been on this for years. Andy Reid moves off Tyreek Hill. Andy Reid has rebuilt an O-line and a receiving core in an offseason. Buffalo can't figure their offensive line out 5 years in. Either can Tomlin. There's a difference between offensive coaches and defensive coaches. And the classic example is the minute Tyreek Hill got a little needy, moved off him, draft Sky Moore, go get Juju Smith-Schuster, very quick rebuild. The offensive coach seamlessly rebuilds it because that's what they do. They speak the language. McDermott has been trying for 5 years to create a run game and an offensive line. He still can't do it. Mike Tomlin, 5 years, still can't do it. So, by the way, Sean McVay came to the Rams, one off season, gets Andrew Whitworth, rebuilt the O-line. It's just the advantage of an offensive coach is they can, in a highly mobile profession, you've got to be able to be really nimble. Andy Reid's the best. McVay, Shanahan, really good at it. McDermott's not. Pete Carroll has struggled at times with the O-line, which rated again last year poorly. Mike Tomlin struggled with it. By the way, Mike Zimmer in Minnesota. Their offensive line, it was a bit of musical chairs. So I think going forward, the Bengals are the clear threat. And I would say the next threat, and they're not quite there, we saw it twice last year, is Jacksonville. Now, they're just not as good.
You know I believe that. And
but
I
they're
think
not there yet.
They're not there yet. I agree with you. But for the time being, the other edge Jacksonville is going to have in the new only one team gets a bye paradigm, the advantage Jacksonville is going to have when they get there, the fact that it will be so much easier for them in the AFC South to get to 13 wins than for the Chiefs dealing with the Chargers and the Broncos and the Bengals dealing with the Steelers and the Ravens. And anyone in the AFC East, when all those teams seem pretty competitive and at this point pretty well run, the Jags are going to have that inside track to the best regular season, the healthiest regular season. I think they have a really good coach. That, you know what I mean? They're of all the star quarterbacks, their guy is the earliest into his career, so they have the longest window before he gets super paid. I think Jacksonville they're not there yet. They don't have the personnel, but they also have, multiple top picks on defense. They don't need them all to hit. They just need some of them to start to come into their own. They're a scary team, man. There is 7-2 the final 9 weeks of last year, won a playoff game in stirring fashion, played the Chiefs tough. Yeah.
So I was going to throw this at you, and we'll talk some NBA because you're so good at it. But I came up with something today on the show. And again, I didn't think I was really fishing for it. I think it's sometimes it's very difficult. The draft has a power over us, is that we just innately believe. It's just in us. If you're a top draft pick, we just perceive you as better. But yet Matt Hasselbeck, 6th round. Tony Romo, undrafted. Kurt Warner, undrafted. Brady, 6th round. Mark Brunell, 5th round. Dak, 4th. Cousins, 4th. A lot of Breeze, 2nd.
Russell Wilson, 3rd.
Yeah. Joe Montana, 3rd.
Yeah.
So there's 3 things that make me wonder if about every 4th or 5th year, you find a guy, a quarterback, in the weeds late in the draft, and you get like 4 years to not pay him. So I laid this out with Brock Purdy. So Iowa State's an average program in an average conference, but they had 4 straight winning seasons with Purdy, and they have a very good coach who's been up for the Nebraska job, Matt Campbell, a very good college coach, well-studied, up for all jobs. In a bad conference with a good coach, Brock Purdy leaves. They go 1-8 in conference. Timeout. It's like, whoa. As I've always said, when you arrived, it's not only what you've done at Fox, the station you left's not as good. When Harbaugh left the Niners for Michigan, Michigan got better, the Niners tanked.
Yep.
So Iowa State with a good coach plummets. The second thing, when you do a deep dive on San Francisco, so he led the NFL in games started that he didn't get hurt, he was 8-0. He not only led the NFL in passer rating, but for a complex system that took Matt Ryan a 2nd year to figure out. It hasn't worked for Skylar Thompson. It hasn't worked for Trey Lance. It didn't work in the first year for Matt Ryan. The kid walks in as a 7th round last pick rookie and masters it. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, wait, we just can't, we don't like this. We don't believe 7th rounders can play. Is it possible? I mean, I watched him play.
No. Listen, it's possible. The flip side to the coin is his biggest limitation already was going to be his arm talent, physical limitations. And now he's coming off major surgery on his throwing arm. And if that was, you know what I mean? If that was a limited arm already, is it now going to be untenable? But listen, the Niners last year, you know this, were my pick to go to the Super Bowl from before the year, and that was assuming Trey Lance was going to be the quarterback. That is, our mutual friend Danny Parkins has been hitting this story on, he does a football podcast called First and Pod, and he and Andrew Filipponi have been hitting this story every week and saying that it should be the biggest story in the NFL, which is the fact that Trey Lance is behind Sam Darnold on this team's depth chart and they spent 3 first-round picks on him is one of the craziest damn things we've ever seen. The guy has never gotten a chance to play, and evidently he's been so bad in practice. They're like Brock Purdy off elbow surgery and Sam Darnold off the scrap heap ahead of him. Like, what? And that he was on the trade market and nobody wanted him. That is a crazy turn of events for the Niners. So the Niners, I believe with above average quarterback play, they should be the class of the NFC. Last year, they had average quarterback play, and they looked to be the best team. I would spin that question slightly different way. Let's just say that the Niners don't have it this year, either because Purdy, the elbow's not all the way there, that I got to, I guess, back up a bit. I feel like 98% of the people in our industry are going to, when it comes pick the Super Bowl time, going to have coming out of the NFC, the Eagles or the Niners. I think those are going to be, almost everyone's going to pick one of those two. The question I have is this. If it's not one of those two, who is it?
Great point.
Because I think the Eagles are good. I also think it's in play that the best year of Jalen Hurts' entire career is the one we just saw. Yeah. That they, you know what I mean? That the Super Bowl hangover, the tougher schedule, the fact that
Shane Steichen left. Shane Steichen.
Both their coordinators left. And even if they don't think they're going to miss Gannon, still, good quarterbacks carved them up last year. I think the Eagles could, it's hard to go to back-to-back Super Bowls. So if the Eagles aren't there and the Niners quarterback situation is as in flux as anyone, who the fuck is winning the NFC? You just go through it. Like I was talking before the show today, and I was like, I'm going to instantly regret it and hate myself for it. But I think, I might believe in the Cowboys this year. We go to the NFC West. The Cardinals are not trying. The Rams, I think they're going to be terrible. You think they could be okay, but they're not, they're not a Super Bowl team. The Seahawks, are we going to get that from Geno again? And then there's the Niners, like we said. No one in the NFC South. I'm sorry, Saints fans. You're not a Super Bowl team with Dennis Allen. Okay. The NFC North, is it Kirk Cousins? Is it Jared Goff? We're going to put Jared Goff there. And then we're to the NFC East. Who is, if it's not, then, and maybe that means it will be the Niners, Eagles again, but it's usually not that chalky. You know what I mean? It's usually not quite that simple. So I don't know.
No, I think, Dallas is one of those teams where I've always had the same opinion for 25 years. And my opinion on Dallas for 25 years is they'll be pretty good.
Yeah.
There's such a disparity in the AFC and NFC that now networks, remember last year and the year before, we were having to give, for years and years, we had to give the AFC occasional games like CBS because now it's the opposite. We're dying for a Bengals game. And no, I think it's the weakest the NFC's ever been. I don't trust Detroit.
I don't trust Detroit. I want to believe in Seattle. I like Geno's story. I like Pete Carroll. Seattle's not going to win 3 playoff games. It's just, you know what I mean? So again, maybe that means it is the Niners and the Eagles. But if it's not one of them, God, it's hard to find. It's not Daniel Jones and the Giants. It's just not.
Yeah.
But then, so I'm going to end up, I can just see it. I'm going to end up picking the Cowboys. And then I'm going to be watching a divisional round playoff game. And Mike McCarthy's going to have that ghost look on his face, watching the clock tick down. I'm going to say, what did I do? I'm going to go bankrupt. What did I do here? But conversely, in the AFC, obviously the Chiefs are the deserved favorite. But there are 7 teams you could credibly make a case for. You could credibly make a case for the Dolphins, the Bills. I don't believe in the Jets the way some people do, but you could make a case for them. The Bengals, the Ravens' case is Lamar's healthy all year. You know what I mean? We already said the Jags, the Chiefs, the Chargers. That's 8 teams you could make a case for. So it's very odd, the imbalance of power right now.
All right, before we pivot to NBA, a social media question.
Good.
The user experience at Twitter has gone in to the tank. I said when Elon Musk took it over, I said, I'm just going to watch it and see what happens. Very quickly, it got annoying. Then violent videos. Now I'm constantly muting them. Ads, I'm constantly muting them. The user experience is more toxic than it's ever been. And I don't think Elon, he's obviously a bright guy. He's a creative, but I also think he's distracted. Threads now gets unveiled, and I went on it. My staff put me on it. I find it irritating. When you look as a young broadcaster coming up, you've been very, I think you've been very dynamic on your Twitter spaces to, engage with people. I find the Elon Musk Twitter experience, and I try to be fair about it, just increasingly a poor experience. So I'm not on it at all.
Well, go ahead. Sorry. So
where are you as a younger person on social media today?
So there's a bunch of social media stuff I'd actually like to talk to you about. So for me, it was kind of a sad choice I made, but that I felt I needed to do it, or it was good for me to do it, because I do miss out on some interactions. I miss out on maybe some ideas I wouldn't otherwise have thought of. But 5 years ago, around the time I started to have a real national profile, just said, I am almost never looking at my mentions. I am not engaging in it whatsoever, except for, if people don't know, back when Twitter was, pre-Musk, if you were verified, you had a separate mentions tab that would only show you tweets from other verified people. And so what that would mean is, if any athletes, if any other journalists, if any other broadcasters were engaging with what I was saying, positively or negatively, I would see it. And that maybe people can say that's elitist, I'm not listening, but it was too toxic of just you. I don't care how kind of, you know what I mean, above it you claim to be. If you have thousands of strangers saying basically you suck, it's going to get in your head somehow. And the flip side is, if you have thousands of strangers saying you're the greatest, it's going to get in your head somehow. And the things that you talked to Ethan Strauss about this, the things that get the most applause on social media are not necessarily representative of the things that are what I use social media for, which is a professional vehicle. You know what I mean? And so I stopped looking at my mentions. So to this day, just yesterday at the Yankee game, some guy came up to me, was like, man, I don't know why so many people effing hate you. I think you're great. And it was nice of him. But I also I was honestly, I'm blissfully unaware these days of how many people hate me, because you got to find, you better see me in person and tell me. And I have seen, so that's a very long, even, and it's not even a full answer. The reason I mentioned it, Musk ripping off that verified tab to mean anything was, to me, very damaging on my ability to engage with anyone on Twitter.
Yes,
very damaging. And so that to me that's a shame. Now then, you have like, hey, sign up for Blue Sky. I got an invite code. And then it's like, sign up for Spill. And then yesterday it was Threads. And I'll probably be a begrudging late adopter, but I don't know, man. I got 600,000 followers on Twitter. I also am blessed to have a platform outside of social media where if you want to see what I have to say, like, I'm on television every day. I do a podcast.
Yeah.
It's not my only outlet. And Twitter falling apart, while it'll be harder to follow the news, might be good for me because I do like spend, I'm compulsively reading the news on it. You know what I mean? And like, I could probably catch up on the news 3 times a day. Like if I just sat and did it instead of 30 every 3 minutes checking whatever checking. Why do you think you and I are some of the few that aren't like regularly arguing with folks on the internet about random bullshit and letting that drain us the way I think a lot of folks have, and I think it's been hard for them.
Well, I'm really busy, married, 6 kids total, restaurants, beer, radio, the volume, a real estate business with my wife. I just don't have time, and I don't care. So, the way I always look at criticism, nobody likes any commissioner. They all have less than 50% likability. Nobody likes Trudeau in Canada. Nobody likes Biden. Nobody likes anybody. Who's popular? The Rock? So to me, are you relevant in this space? You are. I am. Whoever. There's a handful of people. I think the game is relevancy. And I'm also doing a 3-hour show. I've said this before. I play fast. The only way to make a simulcast work is you have to play fast. Steph Curry has 2 turnovers a night and misses 11 shots. I'm not in the perfect business. I'm not Tom Rinaldi. I'm not Tom Verducci. I'm not Tom Brokaw. I'm on a treadmill. I'm playing fast. My pace is fast. So if stories break, I don't read my show. I'm just going.
So here's the thing, and I find it fascinating because I don't mind any of the this person sucks, that this person's a hack, whatever stuff. I will admit though, even though I don't engage, I'm not going to act like I don't see anything. And so I obviously have, and I have to eat it that my long-term projections on Nikola Jokic were wrong. Everything I said I didn't think he could do, he did. That, and I got to eat that. And all the Nuggets fans killing me, they deserve their victory lap. And eventually I think they'll like me. But whatever, it is what it is. But I will admit, when someone put together a 3-minute either Twitter video or YouTube video, whatever it was sent to me, that took the harshest stuff I said about Jokic from 2 years ago and presented it as, here was Nick Wright the day after Jokic won the title. I was like, I feel like this should be illegal. Like this is like this. This has 150,000 views, and you're presenting it like the day after Jokic won the title. I'm here saying nobody thinks he's one of the 10 best players in the league, and all these things that those are my words, and I did say them, but I said them 2 years ago, and so the reason I'm bringing it up to you is because maybe the answer is you are busy and you're elevated past it, but I feel like we have seen colleagues or friends of ours that have really been pulled down into the morass of it and really let it negatively affect either their mental health or what they will or won't talk about on the air. I know you said years and years ago that Old Takes Exposed was a blessing for you because it made people afraid to be on there, and you didn't give a shit about it being on there, and it made people more vanilla. But I do think there is anyone acting like it never affects you at all. And I shouldn't say anyone. I think it does affect people to a degree. The question is, how much will you opt into seeing it? Because once you opt into going into it, it's hard to not have it get in your head in some way, shape, or form. At least it is for me.
Well, and here's the other way I look at it. So, and I don't follow the people who criticize me. They have a right to, and I don't think they don't have a lot of integrity sometimes, perhaps. I don't know. But to what your point is, that's probably a pretty regular occurrence. But I'll give you an example. Maybe if it affected my revenue, it'd be different. But I'll give you an example. So in June, in an era of cord cutting, my show was up on TV 45% year to year. That's unheard of. Same show, right? Different, herd line. My revenue was up in radio in a recession. No other sports show in the country's radio show was up. The volume's on fire. Just met with multiple bankers. My restaurants, my beer. We just got a major restaurant, grocery store chain to pick it up. If I was struggling or I felt some level of criticism or mockery was hurting my business, perhaps I would see it differently. But the truth is, the internet is a lot of, I'll give an example, is I don't check mentions, but I don't run of my 8 social accounts. Yeah. I don't go on 7 of them. The only one I do is Twitter, and I have so many filters on it that I don't see anything, right? And so what you'll find is that the people who are, mocking or critical, it's the same 30 people. And so if you mute them, and I don't block, I mute. So I let them yell and scream at me.
Yell into the void.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
So I think perhaps if it affected, but I have never been. I mean, a prime example, I was at an airport yesterday in Salt Lake City, and I had a Delta representative, a basketball coach, an older lady, a kid, and a guy, as I was walking to the plane, he was in the lounge and coming out, and he's like, is that like every day? And I'm like, it's every minute of every day. And I said, they're my customers. Nobody's ever come up and been mean or, some people may say, I can't believe you said this, but my real life experience, perhaps anecdotal, is so overwhelmingly positive.
Which
the
is
revenue,
why
my ratings. So it just doesn't, I don't care.
So that's why, and the reason I kind of went down this rabbit hole is, it's why I'm oddly, I thought if you'd have told me 3 years ago, a unhinged bazillionaire is going to buy Twitter and seemingly do a Brewster's Millions run it into the ground competition, and what's going to happen is, it's going to splinter off into a half dozen Twitter clones. People aren't going to be able to duplicate it. Like if there was one, maybe, I don't know. If you'd have told me that 3 years ago, I think I'd have been devastated. I think I would have been like, oh my God, I've spent so much time building up an audience here, doing all this stuff. And now that it's happening, I'm a little relieved. Like, if this thing goes away, if it goes away and then a week later I lose my job, I'd be very sad. I'd be like, oh, how, you know what I mean? Whatever it is. But as long as I have my platform, if Twitter, because I'm not going to quit it, I can't. I'm pretty sure I'm addicted to Twitter. But if I have my platform, and Twitter starts to just splinter off into whatever the hell it's turning into, I'm not going to be that sad. Because you also have, what you described is true. I was at the Yankee game yesterday, and I had pretty good seats, and I stood up to go do something, and this guy shouted, "Hey, Nick Wright, LeBron sucks. Jordan's the GOAT." Shouted from like 20 rows behind me. And I smiled, and there was a break in the action. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go talk to him. And I walked up there. And he was so nice. And his girlfriend, or I think it was his girlfriend, was like, oh my God, he watches you every day. This is so cool. And took a picture. And the moment I did that, I mean, again, it's not a fair sample audience. I'm at a sporting event, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I probably took 35 pictures in the next 10 minutes. Yeah. And and everyone was wonderful. Every single interaction was wonderful. In real life, it's not only that, and I'm sure, so I would bet, statistically speaking, some of those people probably have tweeted awful things about me.
Sure.
But it's because I do think the internet kind of pushes you towards a more negative place. Sure. And in real life, it's like, even if I think this guy's opinions suck, I enjoy watching him on TV, and now I'm meeting him in real life. And I agree with you entirely that the actual human interactions are 99% positive. And so I don't know what's going to happen of Twitter, and I'm not sure how much I'll miss it if it goes away.
Yeah, I just don't spend a lot of time on social. I go long stretches, like Friday after shows. A lot of times I'll just tell my social guy, you can run it over the weekend, and I'll tweet something funny occasionally. But I feel a certain responsibility to be available to my wife, my kids, my business partners. I just don't have time for it. And again, I kind of take it as a badge of honor. Everybody hates Elon Musk. Everybody hates Biden. I told my wife this once about Barack Obama. I'm like, this beautiful family, people were outraged he wore a tan suit. It's like, there's just people that are just want to bitch. And it's like, okay, I'm so lucky to have my life. So grateful that I have a beautiful wife and all my kids are healthy. I think all of it.
Speaking of your life, are you moving again? I'm looking at your background. It looks like you might. It's not a. Yeah. I don't. What? So
I sold this. My wife and I sold it.
I knew it. You hadn't even told me. You're the old Colin Cowherd real estate flipper. You're always doing it. It's unbelievable. Yeah. You just moved in there
2 years ago. Yeah, isn't that funny?
Oh, that's great. But that's like one of your wife's favorite things, right?
No, we have a good business.
Real estate. That's what I'm saying. But one of her favorite things is doing real estate stuff. And that's like, one of her, I know she's an artist and that's her real trade, but like, that's one of the things. So you don't have to reveal it on there. Are you moving far from where you are?
I am at a point where I don't need to own anything in Los Angeles. I'm going to have, rent a really nice place.
Dope.
Yeah, by the beach.
That's great.
And just be able to leave at any time, turnkey, don't have to worry about yard and security.
That's awesome.
So I just want to be, as I've aged, I just want to be nimble. And that's what I am. I've got a ranch.
Well, congrats. Sorry, I didn't mean you can cut this out of the pod. I didn't mean to make you reveal that on the air. I just saw the background. I was like, I bet Colin just is in the process of selling this house. I just knew it. Because when I was there, you had the first time I was there, you had recently moved in. And even when you had first moved in, you said, you were like, yeah, we'll probably sell this for X% more than we bought it for. We got a good deal. And I was like, this guy's always making moves, always doing stuff. Meanwhile, I've lived in New York City for 7 years, haven't owned anything. Just rent every time.
I don't think renting's a bad thing. I mean, I've had 26 homes, bought, sold, in my life, and made a profit in 24. I enjoy it. I'm very, I'm always willing to move. I've lived in all four corners of the country. So, it's just some people.
When you're done working, which I know you can't even contemplate, but when you are actually done, totally done, so business has nothing to do with it, what part of the country do you think you'd want to, if you lived somewhere?
I can see myself always having, somewhere in California by the water.
Oh, okay. I thought you might say Utah. I thought
my wife and I have a ranch in Utah. It's beautiful. Love it. We're about 3 months from, it takes us about a year to 15 months we buy stuff, we fix it up immediately. So you could always move it if you had to. That means a lot to us. It's where our kids spend Christmas, summer vacation, 4th of July. And so, we pretty much own it free and clear. So that could stay in the family forever. I would guess I would have something in California. I've got a beachfront place, little condo that's adorable. My wife, during the hurricane, she found something, remodeled it in Naples, Florida.
Florida.
Great walks on the beach. But I'll tell you a part of the country that I'm really, I absolutely love. And it's the Northeast. It's in that Rhode Island. I just
people love Rhode Island, bro.
People
love it.
So Rhode Island is near and dear to my heart. I have very good friends. I used to go there every summer with my kids. Rhode Island beaches are amazing. So I love Rhode Island. I've been to the Hamptons, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket a lot, Stonington. I've been to all these places out east. And I would guess, and I'm just throwing this out there, I'll spend my summers in the Northeast somewhere in that area near the water. And then I'll spend my winters probably in California near the water in a t-shirt, flip-flops, jeans. And
yeah, I mean, you barely wear shoes as is. You're not retired. You only wear shoes when you're at work.
So I grew up on a cold water beach in Washington State, but there is something to the breeze and the sound of the water that to me is a little addictive. So that's how I'll.
Oh, it's the greatest. No, it's the greatest. Sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack you there. I find it
interesting.
I find it fascinating.
Let's do one NBA topic.
Sure.
So I said this, and I thought today it was my lead. I said, you see a lot of teams in the NBA panic. And I thought the Knicks passing on Paul George was the greatest Knicks sign I've seen in years. They would have made that move 10 years ago and 5 years ago. They panicked on Melo. They could have waited until the end of the year. They traded for him in season. And they gave, Melo ended up being a $10 million chandelier in an empty house. And then Amari Stoudemire, everybody in the league knew, bad knees. Suns were trying to get rid of him. That was New York.
Yep.
Paul George is a top 6 two-way player, arguably in the league. The Clippers would move off him. And the Knicks are like, we like him. We're not going to do the deal right now. And I thought, because I think the Knicks, between Brunson, Randall, 11 first-round picks in 7 years, and multiple movable players, like Josh Hart,
Quentin
RJ
Grimes.
Barrett. I think they're one smart move. I think they're a good team. I think they're one smart move from being a very good team, and I think a very good team could win the East next year.
So all up the ante on you on good signs for the Knicks. I'd say this is also a good sign. They're not in the Dame sweepstakes because the old Knicks would be because Portland is dying for a competing offer for Miami. The Knicks have the draft capital. They have RJ Barrett, who Portland would like, young player, a wing, not a guard. But the Knicks, I think, are correctly assessing. We already have a small guard. He's 33 and going to be super expensive. And the Knicks want to keep their assets available for if the Harden thing goes wrong not for Harden. If the Harden thing goes wrong in Philly and Embiid wants out, CAA, all those connections. And, my pal Brian Windhorst said 10 weeks ago, and it was, I don't know how many people picked up on it, but when the Knicks were in the playoffs against the Heat in round 2, Wendy said, the New York Knicks are 95% focused on Miami right now and 5% focused on the future of Giannis Antetokounmpo. And with the Bucks, Giannis, they can offer Giannis a contract extension in September. He almost assuredly will not sign it because there's no incentive for him to sign it. He has 2 years left on his deal. The Bucks are a very old team that is going for it right now, as they should. But Brook Lopez just signed a 2-year deal. Drew Holiday has talked about wanting to retire when this contract's over. Chris Middleton, they just brought back probably on a slight overpay, but because they want to keep it all together. The fact that no matter how this year goes for Milwaukee, it could be Giannis's last year there, or if it's not, he's a free agent in 2.
Yeah.
I think the Knicks smartly understand adding Paul George is an improvement if he's healthy, but it doesn't get us over the top. Adding Dame would not get us over the top. Adding Embiid, or certainly adding Giannis, or I'll throw one more name out there. If Kyrie burns the building down enough in Dallas, Luka could want to get out of there. You know what I mean? I think they are trying to stay, and it's like we already have Jalen Brunson. The Mavs had this and didn't keep it together. I think that would be smart because Jalen Brunson is better than I thought he was.
Yeah.
But if he's your best player, you can't win a title. Impossible. Right. If he's your second best player, if the team is built out properly and your best player is a superstar, well, we already saw it. The team wasn't even built out that well. They made the Western Conference Finals with him being the second best guy with Luka. So I agree with you. I think the Knicks staying out of Paul George, staying out of the Dame stuff is smart. I also think when Dame goes to Miami, I think they become, for next year, the clear-cut favorites in the East.
Yes.
I think Dame, Jimmy Butler, and Bam fit together so perfectly and cover up each other's weaknesses so well. I think they're the clear-cut favorites in the East, and then we'll see what happens out West.
Well, I mean, listen, you've watched them get rid of Vincent and Strus. I mean, you can see what they're doing. And the other thing that tells you that Portland and Miami are talking is how many leaks there are from both teams. So basically, they're sending the messages out like Portland continues to say and leak, we're not interested in Tyler Hero.
Right. Trade him somewhere else and get assets. Yep. Yeah.
So the Portland is giving their fans and their side of the story, you got to give us more than Tyler Hero and picks. And, Miami, all these moves is telling you they're just clearing space. They're getting ready for him. So I think he's going to end up in Miami. And the truth is, it's when you were a young broadcaster and you were 10 years into your career and you're young, or a Dame is 11 years in the NBA, I think there's a certain level of courage to it. But I do think everybody at some point in their professional career needs to give themselves the best opportunity to succeed, right?
Yes.
And I think Dame's earned the right to be on TV in late May. He's earned the right.
100%. 100%. And the other thing about the Dame thing, this is not current Blazers front office fault, but you have a decade of Damian Lillard, and you trade first-round picks for Robert Covington. You stick with CJ too long, and then don't get the right package for him. You treat Nurkic like he's the answer. You made a lot. That previous front office regimes made a lot of mistakes. Now, maybe had they done everything right, maybe they don't win. I don't know. But it wasn't LeBron with the Cavs the first time around level of front office incompetence, but it was pretty damn bad to have between the time LaMarcus Aldridge left and right now that his best teammate was simply a worse version of him in CJ McCollum is a terrible job. You know what I mean? That's a terrible job. And that's one of the reasons the Dame thing to me, is different than a lot of these other trade demands, trade requests. Is he was as patient as anyone could have asked. He held up his end as well as anyone could have expected, if not better. He's coming off a year average 32 points per game. And Portland just didn't. It's not, he wasn't the guy. It's like, I don't want to be in the small market. I don't want to be, he didn't have the wandering eye the moment he got there, the way people felt with Zion in New Orleans or AD in New Orleans. No, he wanted to stay there and wanted to be there, and they blew it. And now, so I hope he goes to Miami. I think it'll be a great fit, and I think they can win the damn title. Eric Spoelstra, Jimmy Butler, Bam, and Dame, that team can win the damn title.
By the way, when you retire, though it's a long way off, where will you go?
It's very interesting. So because I kind of have a two-track mind on this. One is, so I'm 38. What I tell my wife is, in 10 years, my youngest daughter will be going to college. At that point, if I don't have if I haven't put away enough money to have the choice to retire, to where everything, our whole life's paid for, I'm about to be 50, then I've screwed up. My goal between now and when my youngest goes to college is make enough money, put enough money away, that if I want to be like, I'm done, I'm allowed to be, you know what I mean? I can be done. Now, my wife tells me I'll never be done. She thinks I'll never, certainly not at 48 or 49. She might be right. I don't know. But under that circumstance, what if I were done and I was still young? I would do one of two things. I would either go to law school, or I would travel around and play in poker tournaments, which are two very different things, but not that different in that I would need to do something that was intellectually challenging. And I might, I've played around with the idea of going to law school now, like night class. Like, what if I took 2 classes a semester? Now it's I could maybe be done in 6 years. You know what I mean? And then just have that done. And maybe I would do that. Maybe I will do that. I'm not sure. I also think it's kind of bullshit that I have to go to law school. I feel like I should be able to take the bar. And if I pass it, just good job. Like, let me study for the bar and take the bar. And then if someone wants to hire me, fine. But best I can tell, that's only legal in Louisiana. And I'm not even sure if it's illegal in Louisiana anymore.
A lot of things are only illegal. A lot of things are only legal in Louisiana.
Exactly right. Yeah. So I don't know if so that's not a thing, I don't think. My wife, my wife has this store in New York City, Trentage. That's where we do the podcast. She wants to open one in Vegas. And she says she'd be open to living in Vegas. I think Vegas full time is tough. I think the Vegas summers are tough. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like especially with the way the climate's going. I loved Southern California. I loved it, but I was there without my family. That's when I was commuting Houston to LA. I know where I won't live. I wouldn't live in Texas again, with no disrespect to the wonderful people, my friends there or whatever. I couldn't do that again. And I don't think I'll live in New York City forever. I love it here, and I oddly love Broadway. I really love it. And the restaurants are as good as everybody says. But I am, at my heart, I am a Midwestern kid. And I miss having a yard. I just miss it. I miss being able to go, you know what I mean? Put my feet in the grass in a yard. And I've lived in Harlem for 7 years now. So like I don't think and I think New York City would be a hard place to be old. Obviously, that sounds dumb because there's a lot of old people here. There's 15 million people. But just because of the walking and the subway and the weather, I think it would be hard to be an old person in the city. So I think the answer is probably LA. I think that my middle daughter is going to, I don't know if I've told you this. She's going to University of California, Santa Cruz. So she's going to be in Northern California. My son is, works on at Fox on the lot.
Yeah.
And so he's in LA. So that's probably where I'd be. But if I am done before I'm 50, then I might dictate it by what my wife's career is doing. But I also probably won't be done. I'll probably just just do this for a very long time. I just don't know. I don't know. I think you would have not gotten tired of talking about sports, but I think you needed another huge challenge. And that's one of the reasons the volume exists was because I know how hard you work every day on your show, but you've mastered that to a degree where it's not like your show's hard to do. It is a lot of work, but it's not intellectually difficult for you. You know what to do. So you created a new mountain to climb. I don't know what I would do because I'm not a businessman. I'm not an entrepreneur. I am a gambler. But that's also, I talked about putting away enough money to retire by I'm 50. That's also a way to lose that money. So I don't know. I don't know what I'll do. We're coming up. I got 28 more shows, and it will be 1,500 episodes of First Things First. 1,500 episodes of the TV show. And I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, what sports TV shows have been going on without, uninterrupted longer than mine? And it's yours, Undisputed, PTI, Around the Horn, First Take. And I think that's the list.
You know what's interesting? You just jarred a memory from me. You know how earlier you were saying that Twitter sometimes can be discouraging?
Yeah.
This is a prime example of what Twitter is. So one of the reasons I put filters in, I didn't mind being criticized on social. It bothered me when people criticized people at the volume. I didn't like that. Yeah. Or like you. And so when you announced, FS1 announced, and you announced, my show's moving from the morning to after Colin's show, that day I went on to see how people would react to you. Of 100 tweets, 99 thought it would fail and it was a terrible idea. The show is the fastest growing show in sports cable. And you and I both knew that it was the right move for the show. You and I privately didn't discuss it, but what is happening to your show, I largely predicted. You're going to get a stable number. You and I, our personalities are saying we're friends. So you and I knew it was going to work. The company knew it was going to work. Twitter, abject failure.
100%.
Go ahead. Yeah. As a boss, as a very smart person in my industry once said, Twitter is wrong about everything.
Everything. And here's the thing. Not all, but most television shows end by being canceled. Again, not all.
Right.
Some people, it's just like, hey, this is a great run. We're done, whatever it is. But like the most successful version of and I didn't include Inside the NBA or any of those shows, but I'm talking, I'm talking about the daily sports talk shows. PTI is the longest running and most successful, right?
Yeah.
One day that show, could get canceled. Who knows? If that were to happen, there would be an article written, or certainly people, takes given about it failing. It's like, well, it ran for 28 years and had a documentary made about it. Like, I don't think that's so. I mean, the fact that this thing, and we've had different iterations of it, but I've been there from day one. And at this point, I'm the only one that's been there from day one. we are again, right before football, we will hit 1,500 episodes. It's pretty unbelievable. Made it through a pandemic, doing shows from our home. And now, the me, Wilds, and Brew have really hit a rhythm where the show is fun and the show is consistently good. And this show I feel like I could do it as, however, as long as they'll let me. And you and I did talk about the fact that having your show lead, your show and my show be a block on the network, that was, if that didn't work, then one of us, like, something's wrong. And what has happened is, like you said, and I don't understand why people in our business publicize how much money they make. And I don't understand why people, try, to tout ratings regularly. I'm not saying occasionally sending out a thank you or whatever. I just feel like you're just putting a target on your back, especially the salaries thing. I don't get it. I'm like, you get the ego boost of it being written about and your friends from high school seeing it. The downside is it almost assuredly alienates coworkers. It puts a huge target on your back. It's just insane. So I don't talk about either. But what I will say, because you referenced it and it's true, is it is crazy, Colin, that in a time of cable contracting and cord cutting and all of it, your show and my show aren't up small percentages. They're up massive jumps to where we're having some of our best months ever, in a time when that's not true for really anybody. And I think it's a testament to the network. And I think it's a testament to you and I right now. And again, if you're listening to this an hour and 5 minutes in, you like Colin and I both. So I apologize for the self-congratulatory nature of it. But you and I now are both doing the exact show we want to do.
Yeah.
And the fact that is working is so gratifying. You know what I mean? Like, just like, let me do the exact show I want to do. And if it doesn't work, then, hey, I was wrong or whatever. But at least, you know what I mean? Let's do it. And we are. And your show's as good as it has ever been. And my show is so different. I used to be on at 6:30 in the morning, bald-headed, scowling, yelling at people. And now I'm bringing out goddamn trumpeters, laughing, you know what I mean, and talking about the prince that was promised. The show has changed, but it's fun and it's good. And yeah, so in that regard, I'll do it for a long time.
Yeah, Oprah Winfrey once told Jim Gray, the sports guy, who told me about a month ago. He said, Jim came up and was very complimentary of the show. And I said, how are things? And he said, how long are you going to do that for? And I said, I like it. I really enjoy Jason. I enjoy my coworkers. And he said, Oprah once told me, if you talk for a living, keep talking for a living. It's the easiest job ever. Never stop talking.
Before we're done, can I tell you a quick Jim Gray story?
Sure.
At the Super Bowl, we're in the hotel we're staying at, and Jim Gray comes in. And I'm sitting there with some colleagues, and I saw him, and I introduced myself. Call him Mr. Gray. I'm Mr. Gray, Nick Wright, massive respect. And he's like, oh, I know you, Nick. And I was like, okay, sure, thanks. But, and so but then he just engages us and starts telling stories and talking, and we're going back and forth. And so I somehow, I asked him, why are you still working? Why do you still, because he was about to go somewhere and work. And he didn't tell that anecdote or whatever, but he just, gave a good, nice answer. And then he was like, I'll ask you. He was like, why do you do this? And I had just talked about, I basically started to relay a story regarding Tom Brady that I had just done on my podcast. And Jim fucking Gray stops me mid-story. I was like, oh, you told this story last week on What's Right. And I almost passed out, bro. And I'm like, first of all, I'm also scanning in my brain. I'm like, at any point on What's Right, did I ever take a shot at Jim Gray? Because that show with Tom Brady was not like, but I was like, I never said anything bad, did I? But the fact that I was like, that was such a cool moment for me. I'm like, this guy who was, has been the Forrest Gump almost of so many sports moments, iconic sports moments throughout all of history, at some point was riding in his car, listening to the podcast that I do with my children from my wife's store. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And he was so nice. He was so nice and so cool. I'd never met him before that day. But that's a legend. That's a legend in the business.
Yeah, I mean, I one of the things that I've always appreciated about Brady is, his gratitude. He gets emotional now when you talk about, his football career. And I think there's so many people in America that work really hard and don't love their job that every day I drive to work in a good mood. I'm just thinking, I'm going to talk sports. So I try to convey that to the audience that they have a right to criticize me because I'm not always good, but I think I feel very, very fortunate. I grew up in a small town, divorced parents, didn't have a lot, so I feel happy as hell. Ann's not here tonight, so I'm currently taping this at 5:11, and I've got to be honest with you. I may go out and have a cocktail and a steak tonight by myself. That's weird.
That is, when I lived in LA, can I tell you a great spot? It's not like a hole-in-the-wall restaurant, but a great alone cocktail steak spot. The Del Frisco's Grill, which is like the quicker Del Frisco's, but they have the full menu on the right on by the Santa Monica Pier. They have an outdoor seating area. It's only like 4 seats instead of high top, and it is facing the pier. And I used to go there twice a week when I lived by myself out there. By myself, put on a podcast, order a $70 steak, and a side of spinach, and just sit there silently listening to something, watching people walk the pier. This was when I was living out there, was right when, do you remember when Pokemon Go became super popular and it was the game on your phone, but you had to go like find Pokemon in the real world, but it was like, it was people like, it was just hordes of people, a lot of whom playing Pokemon Go and walking on the Santa Monica Pier, and the beach is there. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I understand like $100 for a one-person dinner by themselves is kind of silly, but also no way I could possibly enjoy 90 minutes more. No, I'm just sitting here, like in the corner, outdoors, the ocean breeze, having a great steak, having a drink. I can't recommend it strongly enough.
Listen, I'm pretty frugal. The one thing I spend money on is cocktails and food. I tell my kids this all the time. Education and experiences, I don't look at the check. Like, I'm going to educate my kids. I'm going to have good experiences. I was telling somebody this recently. There's no place in America that gets more criticized but is greater to live than California. I mean, we just lost Scott Baio, which is a great loss to the state economically.
Devastating. Yeah.
Devastating. But we have Mediterranean weather. We have no humidity. We don't get really lightning. We don't get hail. We don't get winter. I guess we get earthquakes. I've never lived through one. We have homeless, which major cities have, but I think Mayor Karen Bass has actually done a very solid job on that. It doesn't feel quite as intense as it was before Karen Bass took over, the new mayor. Our crime is overstated. If you look at
all the
stats,
crime is overstated. It's unbelievable. Yeah. LA, you know what is one of the safest places, big cities in the world? New York City. No one believes you, but it's true. Yeah. It's now like where I'm from, Kansas City, Kansas City more dangerous than Chicago. You know what I mean? Like the cities that the crime stats that people get banged over the head on because people don't understand that you have to do everything per capita. You can't be like, well, there were this many murders. Well, are there 12 million people there or 1.2 million because it matters?
Right.
And listen, you said the homelessness, this is, a separate discussion for a separate day. I think, it is a blight on the American consciousness that we are seemingly just opting in to every major city having a good percentage of its population being homeless, that we've just housing's unaffordable and we're not going to give people mental health care and we're not going to give people adequate drug treatment. So there's just going to be people on the street. But those people, in my opinion, should be angry at those three things. Instead, they're willfully blind to the causes of it and then just fucking angry that the people exist. They're like, what, put these people somewhere. It's like, well, there's nowhere for anyone to go and no one can afford a house. So that's not an indictment on any of these cities, in my opinion, and I understand. I was in LA and I saw there was like a camp, but if you don't have affordable housing and you don't have healthcare or drug treatment, people are going to have to be somewhere. If LA sucked and New York sucked, it's not cheap to live in either place. There wouldn't be millions of people here. People love it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of, I understand. They're like, oh my God, it's so cheap. And I'm not trying to be an elitist again. I'm from Missouri. They're like, oh, the cost of living in South Dakota is cheap. Land's available. You can go. Like, people seem to like California quite a bit. For a lot of reasons.
I love Chicago. I never feel unsafe. My wife and I go regularly. It's my favorite big city in the country. LA's too. I like New York, but Chicago's kind of a cleaner version, easier to navigate. I love big cities. Not all of them, but I don't love all small towns. I tend to be I like to be by the beach, in the mountains, or a city. Right. Now that's, you think to yourself, well, that's everywhere, but it's not. I like to be, I like the mountains because I love to ski and I like to hike. I like the water because I like the breeze and I grew up with it, and I like cities. And so a lot of the country, flat, without water or mountains, is just not appealing to me. That's nothing against the places.
Right, that's why you've never been to Kansas City. It's the only big city in the world you've never been to. That's why. So flat with no mountains.
No city or state gets criticized by Los Angeles, like Los Angeles. And I think some of it is we tend to lean more left than the rest of the country. Another thing is it's a lot of beautiful people, but if the entertainment business was in Cleveland, there'd be more beautiful people in Cleveland. It is part of what our economy is based on. And the other thing is people hate what they don't have or they're threatened by. And the truth is it's the biggest economy in the country. We've got better weather than everybody else. We're not perfect. Our traffic is hard. Taxes, like they are in New York and Chicago, these major municipalities, it's very expensive. You've got, education budgets, road budgets, like they're expensive cities. But I do think it's interesting. People often get very defensive in America. If I went on the air and ripped Kansas City, it would make the newspapers. It would trend.
Yeah.
People in Arkansas and Alabama ripped California, and nobody cares.
Well, so this is, and then we can go, because now I'm gonna start, because I can't help myself wading into politics. I find it. I'm not actually offended, but I find it offensive that, because people know I lean pretty far left, and I hate that Democrats have just decided we are going to allow the other side to call giant swaths of our country not real America. Because if it was, you hear some conservative politicians talk about these major cities with millions of people and say, I was in LA or I was in New York. It's nice to be back in real America. It's nice to be back with real Americans. Can you imagine if someone running for a national office that was a Democrat was like, man, I was just in Biloxi, Mississippi, and let me tell you, it's nice to be back to a civilization as opposed to that hellhole I was in. They'd be like, it's nice to be back with real Americans here as opposed to that. People wouldn't allow it. You are 100% correct that it has just become commonplace to just be like, San Francisco, LA, New York sucks. Don't know why anyone would live there. Oddly, it's wildly expensive, way densely populated. People, you put a house up for a sale and you get 3% over asking the first day. I don't know what's going on there, but that stuff frustrates me, man. And it really frustrates me because they act like any of these places, every place you go to is the most it is, as far as like political affiliation, is like 65-35. There is no place you're going to find in the country that's 90-10 or anything like that. Everything is people, Republicans and Democrats, gay and straight, black and white, everybody mixed together. And I don't like the way people take shots at Chicago and New York. And they're major cities. Listen, and anywhere where you have major cities and a lot of people and a lot of industry and a lot of money, you're going to have the good and the bad that comes with it. That's just how the world works.
Chicago, excuse my language, is a great fucking time. My wife and I eat, party, friends, up all night. I have never had a bad night in Chicago. It is so much fun. You know what's not fun? 10 o'clock crickets. Chicago is a late night, big city, broad shoulders, water, noise. I mean, they're my favorite bar. Remember the one I gave you? You were going to Chicago and I told your wife. Yeah. Did you go?
Yes. Oh, I went. I forgot to tell you. I went to a different place as well. And at the end of the meal, it might have been the place you told me. At the end of the meal, the waitress said to me, she was like, I didn't want to bother you until everything was done. She was like, but the way she put it was very nice. She's like, I know who you are. I'm like, okay, thank you. She was like, Colin Cowherd was here 2 weeks ago. And it was me. I was like, that is unbelievable. She was like, I served him. Now I'm serving you. So I think it was, I forget the name of the place. It was the place you recommended. I went there with Danny Parkins, who you know.
It's my favorite bar in the country. I think it's Maple and Ash.
Yeah, that's right.
I have met the most interesting people there. I think they're going to open one up in Los Angeles. Chicago, I love it. I got introduced to it late. Vancouver, BC, LA, and Chicago. Those are my cities.
So Vancouver's I've never been, but I've heard it's unbelievable. The one place that I would add that I love, my wife just got back from, is New Orleans.
Yeah.
And that just because the culture and the food, and it's another place with beautiful people, but it's a very New Orleans, more so than any other city in the country, feels like you're out of the country. You know what I mean? It almost feels like an international place. But all these places have their issues, but there's, I don't know. You got the your defense of Chicago kind of flippantly on your show.
Yeah.
A few months ago made like that was a big story in Chicago. When J Mac was like, that place sucks. And you were like, I love it there. I go there all the time. That was on Danny's radio show in Chicago, a big topic. It was a big thing. But yeah, it's used as a cudgel for, I think, bad actors. But yeah, I don't know that I could live there because the winters are so harsh, but in the spring and the summer in Lake Michigan, pretty unbelievable. It's like having an ocean thing so big. It's pretty great.
It's also got one of the best looking people under 45 in America because it's the one place in the Midwest to get rich largely. So the best looking young men, the most confident men and women from all those great universities in the Big Ten.
Yes, they go there.
They all go to Chicago, and you go out on a Friday night and you're like, this is a good looking town. There are good looking people everywhere in Chicago.
Oh my goodness. It's so good.
All right, buddy.
All right. Hey, I love you. It's great to see you. Where are you, if you don't mind me asking, then we'll go. Where are you going this summer? I heard you mention you're going on a cruise.
I'm going to Rhode Island for 10 days at the end of August. And then I'm going on a boat trip with 2 other couples in a couple of weeks through the Desolation Islands in Vancouver, BC, which is the warmest water north of Mexico. It's an amazing 6-day cruise.
That sounds awesome. I taken my wife and kids to the Caribbean in a week and a half for the family trip. And then a thing my wife and I have started doing is when we get our week off in August, we take her grandparents, who are the most mobile and with it and awesome 90 and 93-year-olds in the world. We took them, well, it's 90 and 92, but the granddad turns 93 here in a few weeks. Pre-pandemic, we took them to Barcelona, went everywhere, the four of us. Post-pandemic last summer, we took them to Rome. And this year, the four of us are flying to Amsterdam, going Amsterdam to Germany, to Belgium, to Paris, driving it. Me, my wife, and her 90-plus-year-old nonagenarian grandparents, who are our best friends. They're the coolest people. So we've just decided as long as they can do it, they're our travel partners. They're the only couple that likes us enough to travel with us, so they're the people we travel with. Yeah, so that'll be great. Hopefully I'll be in LA and we can get together when you're there.
All right, buddy. Great talking.
All right. Talk to you later. See ya.